Biochemistry with Study with Ash. So let's begin our next topic, that is regulation of gene expression. I will be going over the next couple of topics regarding molecular biochemistry very quickly, and I will be only emphasizing on the important topics, so you guys can go through this part very quickly. So let's begin. So there is the regulation of gene expression. I mentioned some things about DNA and histone methylation, histone deacetylation in my first video. So if you are someone who has not watched that video, do go watch that video before you talk about these regulation of gene expression. So let's start. If we talk about promoter is basically the site where RNA polymerase 2 and multiple other transcription factors bind to DNA upstream from gene locus, and this is an AT rich upstream sequence with TATA and CAT boxes. So basically, I taught this in my earlier videos as well. The TATA box is present in prokaryotes, whereas the CAAT box is present in eukaryotes. So we also mentioned that AT rich sequences usually are easier to break down because they contain 2 hydrogen bonds as opposed to the cytosine and guanine having 3 hydrogen bonds in between them. So as far as promoter is concerned, it's basically the area which increases the initiation of transcription. So once anything binds to the promoter site, there is increased level of gene transcription. And similarly, if there is a promoter mutation, it commonly results in dramatic decrease in gene transcription. So that's all that you need to know regarding promoters. And we also need to know that they're located upstream of the DNA sequence. Then we have to know what is enhancer. So enhancer is the DNA locus where regulatory proteins bind and they increase the expression of the gene on the same chromosome. So the next question that arises in your mind is basically, what is the difference between enhancer and promoters? So basically, an enhancer can be located anywhere in the DNA sequence, whereas the promoter has to be located upstream at the transcription site. And besides that, these bind RNA polymerase. You need to remember that promoter binds RNA polymerase, whereas an enhancer binds the regulatory proteins. So this is the difference between enhancer and promoter that you need to understand. Now, as far as silencers are concerned, these are basically DNA locuses where regulatory proteins again bind, but they decrease the expression of a gene on the same chromosome. Alright? So it's the same chromosome, but they can be located anywhere in the gene whose expression they regulate. This is applied for both enhancers and silencers, but this is not the case for promoter. As far as epigenetic changes are concerned, I've discussed them before as well. That's basically changes made to gene expression without a change in DNA sequence itself, and this is due to DNA methylation, histone modification, and non-coding RNA. I have discussed these things in my first videos, so go watch that and do subscribe to my channel. Now, if we talk about RNA processing is basically that when DNA is made from RNA, you need to remember that you cannot use that RNA as it is. What we need to do is that we use the initial transcript, that is the heterogeneous nuclear RNA, and then we modify it and it becomes the messenger RNA. So how does it become messenger RNA or mature RNA? So what happens is that this is what we need to know. We do not need the mechanism at all. So what we need to know is that we add the 5' end, you add a cap, and at the 3' end you add a polyadenyl tail. So how I remember is that 5 is the higher number, so you set the cap over there. So you set the cap at 5 and the back end is at the 3 prime end, and that's the poly A tail. Then you have the splicing of introns. So as I told earlier, that splicing is basically the removal of introns and retention of exons. And then messenger RNA is transported out of nucleus to the cytoplasm. Now, as far as the messenger RNA quality control is concerned, you need to remember that it occurs in the cytoplasmic P bodies, also known as processing bodies, which contains the exonucleases, decapping enzymes, and microRNAs. And messenger RNA may be degraded or stored in P bodies for future translation. This is new information. You might not see it in the previous editions. So this is basically that they're just saying that messenger RNA quality control occurs in the cytoplasm, and there are some enzymes that are present. And these messenger RNA can be degraded or stored in processing bodies for future translation. So you need to remember that the poly A tail that we added, that does not require a template. So you do not need a template strand for that. And this is the polyadenation signal. So if I try to remember the polyadenation signal, that is AA, U, AAA. You can say array, U, AAA. Then we have mutation in the polyadenation signal that leads to early degradation prior to translation. So if in any case your heterogeneous nuclear RNA, which was the initial transcript of RNA, is not converted into mature messenger RNA, you cannot exactly process it further. So it is degraded early. So if there is no poly A tail due to lack of polyadenation signal, you lose that RNA. So what is a Kozak sequence? So Kozak sequence is basically the initiation site in the most eukaryotic messenger RNA, and what it does is that it allows the small subunit of ribosome to messenger RNA. So after messenger RNA is formed, you need to recognize that messenger RNA so it can bind to the ribosome, to bind to the small subunit of ribosome, so translation can occur. So to recognize, think of it that Kozak sequence is the identity of messenger RNA. This is what you need to remember for RNA processing. So what we did, we added a cap at the 5' end, upper limit cap. Then we have poly A tail. We had a polyadenation signal AA, U, AAA. If this is mutated, you cannot process it further. It is degraded. Then the third step we splice it out. So this is what RNA processing is. Alright, moving on. If you think about the RNA polymerases, these are basically further involved in making the RNA. And we need to remember that RNA polymerase 1, you need to remember this first. RMT123. So R for ribosomal RNA, M for massive and microRNA, messenger RNA as well as microRNA, and RNA polymerase 3 makes the tiny RNA, there's the transfer RNA as well as the 5S RNA. So this is the mnemonic is all you need to remember for this. Then you need to remember that unlike DNA polymerase, RNA polymerase 2 does not have a proofreading function. Alright, so you need to remember that for clinical exposure, you need to remember that if there is a history of mushroom ingestion, you need to remember that there is an inhibition of RNA polymerase 2 which causes bloody diarrhea and severe hepatotoxicity. Bloody diarrhea or dysentery and severe hepatotoxicity if ingested. Then we need to remember two particular drugs, that is rectinomycin, which inhibits RNA polymerase in both eukaryotes and prokaryotes, whereas the prokaryotes there is, you need to remember that there is a one RNA complex that makes all three kinds of RNA. So we humans, we are complex organisms. We are eukaryotes. We need RMT 1, 2, 3. But prokaryotes, they have one multi-subunit complex that makes all kinds of RNA. So for that, you give rifamycin, rifampicin, or rifabutin that inhibits DNA-dependent RNA polymerase in prokaryotes. So eukaryotes, three types of RNA makers. Then alpha amanitin, which causes dysentery and hepatotoxicity. Then you give dactinomycin, which is an anti-cancer drug that inhibits RNA polymerase in both prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Then you give prokaryotes, you give rifampicin or rifabutin, which is basically what it is doing is it's inhibiting DNA-dependent RNA polymerase. So now we've talked about introns and exons earlier as well, that we know that introns do not code to proteins, but they're important for regulation of gene expression, whereas different exons are basically they are involved in protein synthesis. So you need to remember the exons, they are combined in multiple ways. For example, exon 1 would combine with exon 5, or it would combine with exon 3. So they're combined by alternative splicing. So alternative splicing, that alternative removal of introns to produce a large number of unique proteins. So introns we removed and exons we made them combined by different ways, and they produce a large number of unique proteins. So for alternative splicing, you need to remember that you can produce a variety of protein products from a single heterogeneous nuclear RNA, and such as transmembrane versus secreted Ig, tropomyosin variants, dopamine receptors. Just read it once because this is important. They do ask you that this is a host cell evasion in this process in a particular cancer. So what biochemical process would be involved? So you need to remember alternative splicing. Then how splicing occurs is basically that introns typically begin with GU and they end with AG, and alterations in the alright, so as you can see here, the primary transcript, that was the heterogeneous nuclear RNA, it combines with certain proteins, snRNPs, and other proteins, and they form a multi-unit complex that is a spliceosome. So over here, you can see this is GU, this is AG, and this is the U1 SNRP, this is the U2 SNRP. So what happens is there is a cleavage at the GU site over here, and this is starting from the 5' site, and this way this particular UG is connected to the other intron, and this kind of shape, which is known as a lariat, is generated. So when there is another cleavage at the 3' splice site, this lariat is removed and joins two exons. So this is how splicing takes place. But if you can see there is a particular assembly of the U1 SNRP and U2 SNRP, but if this is defective, this leads to clinical diseases which are very important in high yield for step 1. You need to remember that it is affected due to decreased SMN proteins and leads to congenital degeneration of the anterior horn of spinal cord, leading to symmetric weakness or floppy baby syndrome. You need to remember this. So other diseases as are concerned, they are antibodies formed against these small nuclear ribonuclear proteins, that are associated with SLE, mixed connective tissue disease, and other rheumatic diseases. So if you hear mixed connective tissue disease or you think of a splicing defect, think of these diseases and this floppy baby syndrome. Now if we move on to the structure of transfer RNA, we need to remember that it has a 75 to 90 nucleotide structure. It has a clover leaf. You've learned this back in your pre-med or in your first year of mid school. You need to remember there is an anticodon end that is opposite the 3' aminoacyl end, and we have they have a CCA at the 3' end. So this is the 3' aminoacyl end, and this is a CCA sequence because we read it from the 5' to 3' direction. And you need to remember that the amino acid covalently bound to 3' end of transfer RNA. Then we have the T arm. This is the T arm, and it contains this ribothiamidine, pseudouridine, and the cytidine. You guys would have to remember this. That would RPC. So you have ribothiamidine, pseudouridine, and cytidine. Then you have the D arm, which has the dihydrouridine arm. Thank God it does not have a lot of other bases. So D arm allows the detection of transfer RNA by the aminoacyl transfer RNA synthetase, and the attachment site is 3' ACC, 5' is the amino acid acceptor site. So this is the mnemonic actually, that this is the attachment site and it is the amino acid acceptor site. Then we have the charging, that basically this enzyme amino acyl transfer RNA synthetase, and it basically uses ATP to allow binding of the amino acid, and this is charging. So the transfer RNA, this is the transfer RNA, right? So that it reads the codon, and this is the anticodon loop, and you need to remember that it pairs the matching amino acid over here, and a bond is hydrolyzed. So if there is a mischarged transfer RNA over here, you need to remember that it would read the usual codon but insert the wrong amino acid. So just a recap, we have the T arm, which has RPC, ribothiamidine, then we have pseudouridine and cytidine, which is necessary for transfer RNA ribosome binding. Then we have the D arm, which is the dihydrouridine arm, and we have the transfer RNA synthetase, which is the enzyme, and the D arm allows the detection of transfer RNA, and this is the attachment site. So I hope this helps. Then the last thing that you need to remember for this video is that you need to remember the start and stop codons. So I remember it as array, you go. So that's the start codon, and these are good enough mnemonics for stop codons. You are awake, you are great, and you go away. Then prokaryotes, you need to remember that the start codon codes for different amino acids. For eukaryotes, it codes for methionine, whereas for prokaryotes, it codes for N-formylmethionine, and it stimulates the neutrophil chemotaxis as well. So that's it for this video. I hope you liked it. I'm trying to improve my pace in upcoming videos, but do leave your comments, do subscribe to my channel, and I hope to see you guys in the next videos. Thank you.